Hello, and welcome to Breast Cancer Conversations, a podcast brought to you by survivingbreastcancer.org. I am Laura Carfang, breast cancer survivor and founder of survivingbreastcancer.org, a nonprofit organization providing community, education, and resources to empower those diagnosed with breast cancer and their caregivers from day one and beyond. Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Breast Cancer Conversations. Today, I am joined with Dr. Jessa Landmann. Dr. Jessica Landmann is a leading naturopathic doctor specializing in integrative oncology, dedicated to empowering cancer patients through holistic approaches that combine evidence-based, complementary therapies with conventional care. Dr. Landmann co-founded an integrative oncology journal club, regularly presenting to oncologists on the latest advancements in the field. She also serves as a co-investigator for a clinical trial comparing group versus individual acupuncture for cancer-related pain. Most recently, she is part of an international clinic collaboration where she will train oncologists in the field of integrative oncology. Recognizing that quality of life is a primary concern for patients, Dr. Landmann is passionate about educating her patients about complementary therapies to face cancer with greater strength and resilience. Welcome to the conversation. We are live. I am so excited for another episode of Breast Cancer Conversations. I am joined today with Dr. Jessa Landmann, who is joining us from Calgary, which I love because just before hitting record, I said we have a huge following in Canada, people who have attended our support group programs, our expressive writing classes, our therapy classes. The beauty of survivingbreastcancer.org is that we really leverage technology, and with everything being virtual and online, we can reach people all over the globe, which is actually quite phenomenal. So I am so excited to welcome my Canadian listeners, my Canadian friends, and Dr. Landmann to our show.
Thank you.
And so today we are going to be talking about so many things, not only her book that will be coming out, but also about her background in integrative oncology. And I know what something is always on our mind is how to manage our cancer symptoms, including fatigue, which I know I suffer from immensely, even though I'm years out from my own early stage breast cancer diagnosis and treatments. It is still something that plagues me all the time. So I'm excited to dive into that as well. But I want to start things off because integrative oncology is kind of a new term. I mean, new and old. I think it's getting a lot more spotlight these days. So it might have been around for a while, but now I'm hearing it more mainstream. And when I was looking at what we do at survivingbreastcancer.org, like our support groups, our meditation classes, our Qigong, I was like, wait, we are kind of doing this. Oh my goodness. And then just recently, I attended my very first Society of Integrative Oncology conference.
Amazing.
And I was just like, oh my God, like I have to be here. These are my people. And then now, Jessa, I have you on the podcast. I'm like, this is like totally meant to be. So I am very excited to talk about all things. So when someone hears the term integrative oncology, can you just like define that for me?
So yeah, there is an official definition probably on the SIO website. That was a Society of Integrative Oncology. I missed our conference this year. It was in Boston where you are, right?
It was, yes. So, oh my God, I would have loved to meet you in person. But yes, it was in my backyard, which enabled me to attend.
Yeah, I have been to their other conferences in Banff. But the way I describe it to my patients is that I call it the marriage between conventional cancer care, which most people think of as chemotherapy, radiation, nowadays immunotherapy, different medications, together with complementary therapies, which is really an umbrella term for the things that you just mentioned. So art therapy, Qigong, Reiki, Tai Chi, as well as exercise and yoga, nutrition and supplements, even stress management and just sleep optimization, things like that. Because really what research is finding and why maybe people are starting to hear about it more is that patients who are approaching their cancer care with both types of healthcare in mind concurrently are doing better. So often in terms of side effects and even in terms of response rates, quality of life is a huge focus of integrative oncology because I think as most people know, when you're feeling better, you do better. And so yeah, you're right. It's an area that is really picking up and hopefully I think is the future of cancer.
Amazing. And so tell me a little bit about your background and how you got into this field.
Yeah. So my training is as a naturopathic doctor. I'm going into my 13th year of practice. And in our fourth year of clinic, we get to see patients under a practicing naturopathic doctor who kind of supervises us. And there was a specialty shift. It was called the adjunctive cancer care shift. And I applied and I got accepted. And I knew instantly it was for me. It was very rewarding. Just seeing patients week in and week out. How are you feeling? Who are, following the therapies and our treatment recommendations. I'm good. I'm feeling good. Like just feeling great. And yeah. And so after graduation, my first year, I kind of, it didn't focus right away because you think as a new grad, you want to have a broad practice. But within a year, I decided to specialize in cancer care because for me, it was just my calling. I feel like is kind of what I'm put here to do. That's all I can explain it as. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that and a little bit about your background. So, one of the things that we think about, and I love that you position this as like complements, right?
Uh-huh.
So we have traditional standard of care and integrative oncology that really complements each other.
Uh-huh.
And more people, I see this on social media, I see this in my inbox, I hear this at the support groups we lead, that, it's not one or the other. It's very rare that we get someone who is like rejecting the standard of care, chemotherapy, and only wants to go on a naturopathic route using herbs or supplements, which is everyone's own personal choice, which I think is great. But at the same time, we do have to understand what the science is saying and the evidence-based outcomes of when someone is diagnosed with cancer. How can these therapies work together? And so I would love to hear, you talked about it just very briefly in your intro, but how these practices actually help the patient do better long-term. So like when they feel better, they do better, right? They stay on their treatment regimens longer. They may have less side effects such as nausea or being able to have better sleep quality, et cetera. So I would just love to hear what's the magic? How does this work?
Yeah. So here's a perfect example. And this is a really simple one. Everyone is probably familiar with exercise. You should exercise when you're on active treatment. It gets recommended to people a lot. It will tell you that, it helps with energy. It helps with sleep. It helps with mood. It helps reduce pain if that's what you're experiencing. Think about two people, maybe one person who isn't being really diligent about daily physical activity. And it doesn't have to be a crazy workout. It can be as simple as just going for a walk. And they're feeling really fatigued. They're not sleeping. They're starting to feel depressed. They start to isolate themselves. And then they might start to feel like, I just cannot do these treatments anymore. I'm just feeling so lousy. And so maybe they reduce their dose of their treatment, or maybe they just stop altogether because they just can't do it anymore. But then take the next person who's doing the same treatment and then is going for those walks or going and doing some weightlifting or yoga or qigong, and they're connected with people. They're not feeling so isolated. Their mood is boosted. They're among their people. Their energy is better. They're sleeping better. And so they can handle those treatments long term and carry them out to the full. So that's kind of what I mean by their response rates might be better when you follow follow integrative oncology types of treatments and recommendations, because you're not stopping.
Hey, my friend, sorry to interrupt the flow of this amazing podcast, but I'm reaching out to you to ask for your support to help us raise these critical funds that we need to continue to provide the emotional wellness classes, support programs, evidence-based education, and this podcast, of course, to support those impacted by breast cancer. Because of amazing donors like yourself, last year we've been able to offer over 400 programs serving 6,000 individuals, 57 webinars focused on medical education and information that attracted over 42,000 views, 133 workshops supporting mental health such as expressive writing, art expression, and meditation, and 142 support groups tailored to those living with early-stage breast cancer, metastatic disease, and inflammatory breast cancer. Help us keep our nonprofit, survivingbreastcancer.org, thriving. Hop on over to survivingbreastcancer.org/donate to make a one-time contribution or a recurring monthly gift. It's the perfect way to celebrate this holiday season. Give the gift of hope. Yeah. Now, I used to consider myself very active before my diagnosis, and I would like to continue to be very active. And as I'm hearing you say this, like in our heads, like I know exercise is good for me. And I don't think I exercised this week. I'm just gonna be like super honest. Like I'm tired. I'm not sleeping well. And especially when like you're fatigued, like that fatigue of like your body just feeling so heavy, so exhausted all the time. I'm probably drinking way too much coffee. That's not helping me. Like all of these things are happening, right? And so literally I'm recording this podcast and my husband was like, okay, you go record your podcast. I'm going to go work out. And I'm like, what? How do you have time for this? And it's like, okay, how do you do the time management? Like I can just come up with all of these excuses and it's Friday night. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'll order some pizza tonight for dinner. Who knows? I feel like I'm doing all of the wrong things, right? Except that when we're talking to cancer patients, we want to take control and, meet our doctors where they're at. They're giving us these toxic chemotherapies to kill the cancer. I want to do my part. I want to eat healthy. I want to walk. I want to give it my all to make sure that this cancer is getting out of my body. But for someone who doesn't have a regular workout routine or maybe hasn't been really active in the past, and then to be diagnosed with cancer, to ask that person to like, okay, now start working out. Like, how do we motivate people? And, we see a lot of like the standards. Is it like vigorous walking? Is it 75 minutes of high intense cardio? Is it 150 minutes a week, et cetera? How do we, merge all of this together with, my example, like life just gets in the way and, 7 days go by and I don't think I like exercised or lifted.
Yeah. So
I don't think I'm the only one. So if you're my listeners out there, you're not alone. Come support me.
You are not the only one, especially with fatigue. It's like, it's hard to want to get moving and feel motivated when you're feeling fatigued because you start to feel like, oh, man, I'm trying all these things and nothing really is working. So one thing is that as a naturopathic doctor, I also get to spend a lot of time with people. My consult times are about 60 minutes. So it's not just like in and out of the office with your oncologist. Oh, and remember to exercise. And then it's like, okay, yeah, I will. And then out the door, right? It's easy to give advice. But like when you have the amount of time that I get to spend, I'm working with people. And so identifying, okay, what is that time management? Maybe you start to record a couple of days and where you spend your time each day. So this is actually really fascinating because we might spend, an hour and a half on checking email or surfing the internet or on our phones or doing something. And so when you start to record how you actually spend your time, anyone can find, 15 minutes to do some sort of physical activity. So that's one little trick for time management is just finding those spots. If you have...
That sounds really scary and vulnerable to like, oh my God, I'm going to try it and actually see where my time goes because I'm a little scared.
Yeah. It's kind of like when you start tracking your food too. You're like, oh, I didn't realize how little I eat or how much I eat of this or how long of periods of time I go without eating. Like it's, when you start to track things, it's really interesting. Also, if you have a partner, like I don't know if you have a home gym, but if you have a partner who's like motivated to go and work out, sometimes I tell my patients, like get your partners to drag you down there, right? And then because sometimes it's just the getting there, right? I would say maybe not anyone, most people who start to, do some sort of physical activity routine do start feeling better within, a couple of weeks or a month. And then when you start feeling better, that's very motivating. Maybe you start to see some changes in your body, or maybe you start to be like, oh, I actually slept better. My skin feels brighter because I'm, there's little things that people notice. So someone who has also like never maybe had an exercise routine as well. Yeah, it can feel very overwhelming. Where do I start? Right. And there are a lot of hospitals these days and big centers are starting to have these exercise programs that you can join, often free of charge, and someone can guide you and teach you. So here in Calgary, we have such a program where patients can join. It's twice a week and they get help right from the very beginning if they're beginners or if they're advanced. So joining looking for those types of free community activities can be really helpful for people. I also spend a lot of time educating people about, the benefits of exercise, how this is going to help them feel better and manage side effects. I've never met a more motivated group of people working with people who have cancer. A lot of people are very motivated. And sometimes it's just the education piece. When you have awareness, you start to start to have intention. That intention creates actions. And so that's sometimes the education piece is the first. So there's a few ideas.
Yeah. No, that's super helpful. Oh my gosh. I feel like you're calling me out on all these things. Yes, it is a home gym. Yes, I should be able to walk downstairs and go. And it's amazing sometimes just how hard that can be. But, similarly too, and I appreciate you sharing some like the free resources or, doing weight bearing activities. This doesn't mean you have to like go out and buy like an expensive set of like barbells or anything like that. There's things that you could do. I think I started like maybe squatting while I'm brushing my teeth, but like just some sort of movement. But for me, I was a huge yogi, practiced yoga a lot before my cancer diagnosis. And it was very interesting mentally for me to move away from that after my breast surgery because I lost so much muscle mass and flexibility in my chest and my arms. And I don't know if this has happened to any other patients, but going to my yoga class that I loved so much became incredibly triggering because I was focusing on what I couldn't do, which is like the opposite of like a meditative yoga practice. I was like, oh gosh, I used to be able to do all these things. And now because of cancer, like I am now finding restriction. But that also opened up doors for other styles of yoga, other types of yoga that I was able to explore that I historically was not interested in. Learning how to like sit still was like a big piece for me. So it's no longer these like crazy wild, handstands or, very vigorous type of positions, but really just like sitting with myself and being happy with who I am in my body, what my body can do that day. And so, I think trying to find new activities that are motivating for you or something you might want to explore could also be like new tactics. So for me, that was, I almost had to like go away from it before I can come back to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes totally sense. And that's such a good point because when people do think of exercise too, they might think like, oh, I have to go for a run. I don't like running. I really dislike running, but there's so many things. Like maybe you like to bike ride. Maybe you like to go dancing. Maybe you want to try boxing or kayaking or swimming. Like it's just find something that actually gives you pleasure and do it. And, two things I wanted to say. Wow. I love yoga. I could never do handstands. So I could see why you'd be, intimidated. And also what you said, I don't know if anyone else is like this, but a lot of women experience that loss of upper body strength. And that's also where people lose motivation of like, I can't do this in particular. And then maybe just give up and not look for something else and new. Yeah, that's important. You said that.
Yeah. And specifically for those of us with breast cancer that is hormonally driven too. I know a lot of us are also on either aromatase inhibitors or tamoxifen, and we're on those treatments for, 5 to 10 years, which have their own set of consequences, including, your bone health and needing to maintain your bone health to avoid osteopenia, osteoporosis, etc. So I think even more to your point is that exercise is so important to maintain, your strength and your overall health. But on the flip side is all of the joint pain that we have experienced. And myself being premenopausal, I was forced into menopause through these treatments. And so being in my 30s, there was like, wake up one day and all of a sudden you're in menopause, you're going through hot flashes. I probably gained about 50 pounds, 50. Like it was unbelievable. I didn't wake up like 50 pounds heavier, but like over time, my body just could not process like fat. It was just storing everything. And so again, that kind of triggers down this rabbit hole of, self-image, a reminder of cancer. You're taking a pill every day. Your body isn't what it used to be. And it was very hard to get back to that. I'm currently on my like weight loss journey, if you will, but like, I feel like the cards are sometimes stacked against you. Yes, cancer patients are incredibly motivated, but it is like we are fighting against a wall, I have to say. It is very challenging.
It is, yeah. And, you had a recent guest talking about the vaginal estrogen and, why estrogen is so important. I listened to that episode, but it's true, estrogen like improves our metabolism. It's directly involved in burning sugar and burning fats. So that decreases. That's why women gain weight. One of the reasons. Joint pain if they're limited from exercise, not sleeping because of hot flashes, like all these things contribute to weight gain, contribute to fatigue. And yeah, there's a lot stacked against you. And it's not easy. Anyone who gets up and tries to do the things, like kudos to all of you for sure. It's not easy.
Yeah. And what I hear you saying too is like validating that this is normal, that, how many times I was like, I can't lose weight. I don't know what's going on. I work out. I'm trying to eat healthy. But you actually broke it down to like the science. Like this is the role that estrogen plays. We're depleting it from our bodies. This is going to happen. And I think just hearing that, like, oh my God, this is not my fault. This is like a biological chemical reaction to the treatments that I am on. Okay, now someone is acknowledging this and now I can move forward. To me, that is so motivating because it's so easy, I think, sometimes for doctors to just say, exercise more and eat better. And then they walk out the room, right? But to know like, okay, this is happening to us. How can we then fight this? What are the practices and habits we can start forming? So I would love to hear a little bit more about the integrative oncology examples. Like when you have a patient like me, you're just kind of hearing like all of this, I don't know, side effects that we're dealing with. How do you help counsel somebody? How do they get started?
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, it's like, what are the main things for you? And honestly, most women, it's the same. I can't sleep. I have hot flashes. I'm fatigued. I've gained weight. I have pain. It's always the same things. So as I said earlier, education is huge. And so I just wanted to go back, like just to weight, for example, and estrogen.
Yes.
Like I feel like I can't, I'm always hungry. I can't stop eating. I think this is contributing to my weight gain. Well, estrogen also, it does interact with parts of the brain that are involved in appetite control. And so when you lose estrogen, you lose those signals. And so women just are losing those signals of fullness and want to eat. And so sometimes even just knowing about the science and knowing about the education, it's like, okay, how can we hack this? So one, you can try and be super motivated and have self-control and be like, this isn't me. I'm not hungry. It's my estrogen, and try and make a joke out of it. Staying really hydrated, eating lots of high protein meals, that can help with satiation as well. There's little tricks like that. In terms of the not handling sugar and fat as well after a meal, there's research with being very like going for a walk or something or doing some sort of activity very soon after a meal. When your muscles are moving and contracting, they're taking that sugar and fat out of the bloodstream and using it for energy. So that's kind of like one little trick. So, there are little tricks like that. Now, and then if we want to go like symptom, like head to toe, like brain fog, hot flashes, insomnia.
Yes.
Like
Let's do
totally
it.
could. Yeah, I totally could. Because all these things contribute to, fatigue too, right? And that was like, I have a whole chapter on that. But like, so brain fog, for example, and again, just like estrogen, again, stimulates parts of the brain that help us with memory and concentration. So it's no wonder, people were not crazy. The exposure to chemotherapy as well. We know that women perform on cognitive function tests just from being exposed to chemotherapy. Not fair, right? So what can we do? So definitely research with cardiovascular exercise. There's actually a surprising amount of research with acupuncture. I've started doing a lot of scalp acupuncture. Yeah, because acupuncture works by stimulating nerves, and there's a lot of nerves on the head that are very superficial. You can actually feel them if you know what you're looking for. So, and there's a couple of herbs too that can help. Like there's a little bit of research with like omega-3 fatty acids, for example. Do you want me just to go through all of symptoms?
I am so curious. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I have never actually experienced acupuncture before too, but I know it's something that I'm very curious about and interested in. Same with our listeners. I would love, I guess, absolutely. Chemo brain, chemo fog, cognitive abilities. You feel like you are going crazy. You're like, I just can't function. And that was really hard for me when I got finished with chemotherapy and I took a medical leave from my job. And then when I came back full time, I was not as sharp as I used to be. That became very anxiety driving going into big meetings with my peers and colleagues and upper management. It also caused like panic attacks, like a whole new slew of symptoms because I didn't know what was going on. And so I wish you and I had this conversation like 5 years ago because this would have been so helpful. But yes, and to pinpoint it as you kind of started off, it was like, we were given estrogen, like we were born with estrogen in our bodies. It serves a function. The moment we start depleting that, things are going to change. So yes, please continue.
Yeah. Well, I'll touch on acupuncture since you haven't tried it, because it is one of my most favorite things to do. And it's actually one of the most researched integrative oncology treatment. If someone is going to do treatments, it's like, some healthcare practitioners, like some family doctors or pharmacists or even oncologists sometimes are a little bit wary of like different herbal treatments or, different supplements. But acupuncture is usually very widely accepted. So if there's any kind of like trepidation or fear, I just stick with acupuncture because It's also, like I said, it's been shown to help with brain fog, but it's also amazing at hot flashes. It's one of the
Mm.
most consistently, like in research, the most studies consistently show that it works. Some other herbs are kind of like, some show yes, some show no, but this one is consistently like, it helps quite a bit. And
Oh, that's so great to know.
interestingly, like the effects are really long lasting. Like sometimes you can go for a couple treatments and it stays decreased for many months at a time. Acupuncture is
Does it
also,
matter where the acupuncture is given?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
head, hand, legs?
Yeah, there's points all over the body. So one of the most common ones is in the ear. So in our ear is the vagus nerve. So the vagus
Mm.
nerve is what is responsible for our parasympathetic nervous system, which is like the part of our nervous system that calms us down. It's like our rest and digest. And so when you put a needle in the ear, it stimulates that vagus nerve, calming the body down. And that's why it can help with hot flashes. That's also a point for
Wow.
insomnia and anxiety as well. But yeah, so there's
Oh
a
my
few,
gosh.
yeah, and then there's a couple points on different places around the wrists and the feet as well. Acupuncture is also one of the only treatments that has been endorsed by the American Society of Clinical Oncology, or ASCO, which is kind of like the creme de la creme of cancer organizations,
Yes.
for joint pain, for aromatase inhibitor associated
Mm.
joint pain, because it also works very, very, very well. So, yeah, so acupuncture for the win for pretty much every side effect.
So if I were to start to find like an acupuncturist and going, would I just be able to share like what my symptoms are and then they would know how to like treat me?
I would think so. So,
Amazing.
yeah, yeah.
I
So
don't know why
I'm
I've waited
trained.
so long.
Yeah, I'm trained in Chinese medicine. Not every acupuncturist is, depending on the state or the province. There's different, training lengths of time. I think
Mm.
there's 1 year programs or 2 year programs, but yeah, I would think that most would know how to treat it. Yeah.
Okay. Amazing. And you mentioned also, I think one of my myths is that you have to go to acupuncture multiple times before you start seeing a benefit. So you were kind of saying like maybe 3 sessions or something along those lines can be typical.
Yeah. So sometimes, like I always say, if someone doesn't have kind of a positive result, and by at least 4 or 5, depending on how severe the symptoms are, it's probably not going to work. So
Okay.
like most of my patients notice something after just one treatment.
Okay.
Acupuncture, yeah. So acupuncture is cumulative. So it gets better the second time, gets better the third time, fourth time. I usually have my patients commit to at least kind of 6. We can kind of see, and then come back, on an as needed basis. Yeah. So it's really effective. It's really amazing. I feel like there's nothing acupuncture can't
Incredible.
treat.
And so going back to how we started to and kind of your expertise around fatigue,
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit and we can even segue like how acupuncture can help support fatigue, but really what's going on in the body? Why do we feel so with everything?
So many reasons.
Ugh.
And it is so personal. So, so obviously for our breast cancer listeners, everything we've already spoken about, right? Like you have pain if it prevents you from sleeping, or hot flashes, or the brain fog and the weight gain and things like that, right? Like all of that causes fatigue, of course, right? Even just the stress and the emotional toil of coming out of treatments. My female patients are, it's like, I don't know how to exist in this world anymore. I've done treatment and everything else is the same. Everyone expects me to be the same. And, I'm not the same anymore. And I don't even really
Yes.
know how to communicate that sometimes. Right. And so that's very specific to, for breast cancer. But, also, for example, women who have gone through radiation and chemotherapy are at higher risk of developing thyroid dysfunction. So you should always get your thyroid checked if you're a breast cancer survivor. There's a full panel, which I've, described elsewhere and I could talk about here, but it's something that women should definitely rule out. If your thyroid isn't functioning because it's been damaged from radiation, then that's definitely going to affect fatigue. Even things like, being exposed to chemotherapy puts people at a higher risk of developing diabetes. So making sure you're
Mm.
properly screened for diabetes, and, so you can make sure your body is handling the fuel that you're giving it, that is actually going into the cells. So a lot of people aren't routinely screened for these types of things that may resolve just as a result of treatment, right? If someone has, depression, itself, that is highly linked with fatigue. It's highly linked with worse pain. It's highly linked with insomnia. And so maybe you are addressing primarily mood and depression and anxiety in someone. So, the way you approach fatigue is very different for everyone. I've one example I give to people is, how you would help someone with fatigue who has depression and sleeps all the time is very different from someone who suffers mostly from anxiety and stress and worry who can't sleep at all. It's very different. So, fatigue is kind of like a blanket symptom, but the causes are very different for everyone. And I think that's where a lot of doctors, like maybe family doctors, just don't know where to start. So if anyone who's suffered from fatigue probably has the experience of sharing it, I just cannot bounce back, and the
Yes.
advice often is just give it time. It'll get better on its own, be patient with yourself. And, what you said earlier about, your at home gym in your basement, you're like, it should be so easy just to go downstairs and work out.
Yes.
Another thing I always say is that recovery isn't easy. It's a lot of work. And so, it's not a passive process. It's a very active process. So those are just some examples. Fatigue is very multifactorial. It could just be inflammation as well, from recovering from chemotherapy and radiation. We know that muscle mitochondria gets affected. That can cause weakness, which can cause fatigue. So yeah, I could go on and on. When I'm helping and assessing someone for fatigue, I have like a head to toe checklist of what has someone been through? What treatments have they been exposed to? What other conditions might they already have that's not related to cancer? Maybe they had fibromyalgia or something like that, or celiac. They don't absorb food properly, right? And then go from there. Yeah, it's definitely not a one size fits all approach.
And I think it's great that you take like an hour with your patients also to really get to know them, to see the whole person versus just, here's the symptom and, kind of over the counter, like textbook, oh, just give it some time, or, if it's not better in a week, give me a call type of thing. How do I know where to start? So part of me is thinking like, do I need to go Google and like seek out naturopathic doctor? How does like the workup happen? Like, how do I know if I'm vitamin deficient or if it's X, Y, and Z happening in my body? I guess where do I start?
Yeah. Oh, that's a really great question. So the way everyone might approach it differently. I mean, naturopathic doctors or integrative medicine, specialists or, functional doctors, they have a different lens, right? So we're kind of more looking at, the whole person. So everyone might start differently in a different spot. I like to start with blood work. And so ruling out those things I just said. We have to make sure your thyroid is functioning okay. We have to make sure you're not diabetic. I like to test for vitamin D. I like to do a full iron panel. Anemia is very common in people as well. You can test things like B12, and there's a whole other testing you can do if you want to test, every vitamin mineral. I don't think it's necessary. I like to test cortisol levels. That's our stress hormone. See how, that's often very high, which can affect fatigue. So I start with that, because if any of those things are off, then that's a place we need to fix and we can rectify. And then maybe just from that, someone's energy improves. The second place, and I wouldn't say in any order, maybe like tied for first place, is I always look at someone's nutrition and what they're eating. People are given, follow, and the advice on the internet is like so vast with what you should eat. Some women do, fasting regimens, intermittent fasting, or have switched their diet. Oh, I need to be a vegetarian, or only, one meal a day, or this or that, And so I'm really looking at what is someone eating. First of all, making sure they're eating enough, because if we're under eating, we won't have energy. Looking at how much protein they're eating as well. So lots of research to show that people who eat higher amounts of protein have better energy. And those, just those two things are the most common things I see, and especially in women who are breast cancer survivors. So those are like the places I first start. And then I kind of go down the rest of the lifestyle stuff. So looking at physical activity, dipping my toe in that conversation, depending on how much I want to talk about it, right? We need to meet people where they're at, obviously, right? And then assessing for like, okay, what's going on, that kind of head to toe thing. Like, let's say if we say head, it's like, okay, how's your mood? Stress, worry, depression. Are you sleeping? Sleep's obviously a huge thing for breast cancer
Yes.
survivors. Kind of going down. Is there any lingering digestive complaints? Someone has long-standing diarrhea. Maybe they're not absorbing nutrients. We need to fix that. Do they have pain? And we need to fix that with various things. So it's really just like, I have sometimes women pick the top 3. Like, if you could say, like, can you fix this, like, today? What would that be? And we start there.
Yeah. Amazing. I appreciate that. And that's tangible. Whether you're newly diagnosed looking for someone to complement your care, or if you are living with metastatic disease or in survivorship, I don't think it's too late to find someone like yourself, like Dr. Landmann, to kind of help complement us so we can feel our best.
Yeah. Yeah, it's never too late. I mean, I work with all people, like, just diagnosed, about to start the process, to metastatic, to survivorship as well. So yeah, it's never too late. And, I guess why I love what I do too is I'm always in a bit of awe of just how much complementary therapies can really positively impact people. So it's really humbling sometimes.
Amazing. And so did this all inspire you to start your book? Tell me a little bit about that venture.
Yes, it did. So the book, it's called Beyond Cancer Fatigue, a roadmap to recovering energy after cancer. So it is all about fatigue. There's not a book like it. There's no book out there to help. There's lots of different cancer books and, diet and different things, but this is specifically all about what you can do to increase your energy. And the reason I wrote it was because, you said in the very beginning, you struggled for many years post-treatment as well. It is the number one thing that brings people into my practice. Whether they're going through treatment, I'm exhausted, or they're done treatment, I'm still exhausted. And, like I said, it's really humbling when we, figure out what that root cause is, go after it. People get better. And it's not always, get better, stay better. It's always can be a bit of a roller coaster, ups and downs. Some days are better, but it's always like better than it was, right? And I just noticed that women are just not getting this advice, and not just breast.
Yeah.
I work with all cancer, like all cancer populations, not just breast cancer. And I said for years, I need to write a book. I need to put this in a book. I need to get this information out there for at least 3 years. And then finally I did. So yeah, it's written. I'm super excited.
That's amazing. And when is it coming out? How can people find it?
It's coming out in March 2026. And I think all the usual avenues. So definitely Amazon. It's actually available for pre-order on Amazon, which I noticed.
Amazing. I'm going to pre-order it. I feel like I need this.
Oh, thank you. Oh, that would make me so happy.
Fatigue is just definitely a roller coaster, definitely something we talk about. And it's nice to know that we don't have to live this way, that our quality of life can improve, and that there are some techniques that you were easily mentioning. It's not going out and buying a huge new gym equipment, like go for a walk. Like I literally got a dog during COVID just to like get me outside. I was like, I need to be able to take a walk. And now I do it a couple times a day. But I love this idea too of like timing it after meals. So I'll definitely be doing that tonight, probably after my pizza because it's Friday. Yeah. But like, taking my dog for a walk and then tracking. Like, I think that's another key takeaway from today's conversation, like tracking what we're eating. What are the actual nutrients in the foods that we're eating? Mm-hmm. I think, just human nature, we always think we're doing better than we actually are until you actually like look at the numbers and the data does not lie. And then also looking at your day, right? So tracking like where do your hours go and what can we carve out? Actually speaking of like our dear friends up in Canada, one of our amazing instructors, her name is Gloria, and she leads our meditation program every Monday. And it's 15 minutes of meditation every Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern. And she's like, everyone has like 10 to 15 minutes and we're just going to do this. And she opens up a Zoom. We all come, we meditate. And then now it's evolved into some like more programming. People can leave after the first like 10, 15 minutes. But, she's got this following now that there's meditation and now there's reflection and then there's journaling. I mean, she's got a tribe now of people that are just like, all in and feel amazing. But I think once you put it on your calendar and make a habit of it, it becomes really great. And so we've started recording some of her meditations. So now it's on demand. People can watch or listen to a meditation if they're getting anxious before going into a scan or before treatment, or if they're having trouble falling asleep. I've been doing a little bit of research myself on understanding different like sound frequencies to kind of see how that can help someone calm down. I'm dealing with anxiety. So like, how can I just like remember to breathe and take deep breaths And when I'm like focused on it, I realize I'm not using the full capacity of my lungs. Like this whole awareness, I think that you're really talking about. So many good takeaways. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And good for you. It is true. You have to schedule it in. It's there. It's about prioritizing yourself too. I think especially women sometimes feel guilty taking that time to themselves. Like you said, how do you have time to do it? To your husband for the exercise? You probably have a list of 40, 50 things in your head that you want to do that you'll, maybe will lead you away for something that's self-care.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that women need to feel less guilty.
Yes, I love that. Amazing. Well, is there anything that you'd like to leave our listeners with? Maybe a question I didn't think to ask or any additional information that we did not cover in this short time together?
Yeah, no, I mean, your questions were amazing. It was a great conversation. I think what you're doing is great too. This breast cancer conversation podcast, you really help women who are listening. There's lots of key tidbits. So that's on all your episodes. So yeah, good for you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, thank you for taking the time today out of your busy schedule, sharing and enlightening us on your practice and how integrative oncology can really support us cancer patients going through treatment and thriving afterwards. So we will definitely be in touch. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Laura.
And thank you, everyone, for listening to our show. I would like to acknowledge that all of the information on our podcast is from personal experiences and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. You should always contact your medical care team. If you are looking for specific topics or would like to be a guest on our show, please feel free to reach out. My email is laura@survivingbreastcancer.org. Our show is made possible by our nonprofit, survivingbreastcancer.org, and by our incredible donors like yourself. You can hop on over to survivingbreastcancer.org to sign up for our mailing list, make a donation, and explore the 400 plus programs we offer each year at survivingbreastcancer.org/events. Until next time, keep on thriving.